share out my screen and share out the agenda. We'll get right into it here. All right, so we got I was going to say we have a threesome today, Jim, but that wasn't going to come out right. We have three things to cover today.
Awesome.
And those are the wins. Liran and team have some pretty awesome updates on Fortify that we're going to spend. I think Chip about a good 15 minutes on, right? We want to spend some time and dig into this, right?
I'm guessing it's going to take up that much time. Yeah.
Okay. And then we're going to bring on Miss Lee, who hasn't been with us in some time from CIS. And I think it's apropos to do so as they released 8.1 a little over a month ago. The iterative update to version 8, which is pretty important, in which I won't steal the thunder on the why it's really important. But we'll go over, what it means. And based on where you're at, whether you're new to the controls or existing, we'll talk about that. And then how to get started if you are new to the controls, or how to keep going. So I'm excited to have Phyllis join us as well. So Jim, before we kick it off, did John Strand get a hold of you, by the way?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Can I give you a preview of what he's going to talk to you about?
Please.
Yeah. So
Publicly?
John, what's that, Chip?
Publicly?
Oh, he's excited to get SaaS alerts more involved. So let me tell you what, and I might not nail what they did 100%, but they had a fairly substantial pen testing engagement that they pretty much had free reign to get in. So here's what they devised. They got I forget how many, but let's just say a substantial number of Amazon gift cards. And they created their own QR code and put it on the Amazon gift card. They then targeted every, major people in the organization, home addresses, corporate addresses, etc. With the Amazon gift card, said, the congratulations, just scan the QR code, which then prompted them for their M365 account, which then put a man in the middle and intercepted their MFA. And they almost had 100% hit rate.
Wow.
And
that doesn't sound like pen testing. That sounds like spear phishing testing.
Well, as
you said, they have free reign.
Yeah, pen testing.
Yeah.
They have
get in any way you can.
Yeah, well, it depends on scope, right? The first thing you pen test is scope. It could be social engineering, it could be spear, it could be whatever they deemed was in scope that they could get in. And so he was like, I gotta get, so they really want to do a webinar, Jim and Chip, with you guys to talk about how this could be thwarted with SaaS alerts. So he's looking to get with you guys to get more involved. But I thought that was, wow, what a brilliant way to get somebody to give up their credentials, huh?
Yes. Oh, yes. Really good.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, enter log into your corporate email for for $100 Amazon gift card. That's nuts.
But what's fascinating is how they think exactly like a really good pen testing firm, and obviously arguably one of the best in the world. How they'll come up with things as creative as any black hat hacker will, and get into an organization.
Exactly. Wow, one of the things that makes them so good.
Yeah, and what it does bring up, by the way, when stealing thunder, and not going to ask Phyllis to come on yet because she could be doing some work while we're going through our stuff, but it really gets into the whole governance piece about who has who would have thought, hey, have a policy for if you get a gift card in the mail at work, right, what to do. Right now, there's gift cards. We know the gift card schemes, but this is a physical gift card, very different from somebody doing the typical gift card scheme.
Right. But
this reminds me of the old leave the USB sticks in the
Yes,
parking lot.
yes,
And this is
yes.
just the next iteration, more advanced version of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great one. In fact, in fact, we're trying to get James Carroll. He's another great pen tester to come on. Sassler is going to try and come on in about a month and kind of walk through kind of how, literally he can show MSPs how to, just easily go on dark web and help show their customers of how just easy it is for, the social engineering to occur. By the way, Cory, I sent you a few Amazon gift cards. They're fine. Don't worry about it. All right. So let's start off with some wins, Jim.
Okay. Well, that kind of leads us into a couple of the ones that I wanted to talk about. Just from the standpoint of, I think, recognition of the importance. So I'm not going to mention names here, but right now, for whatever reason, we're seeing a ton of education opportunities, and specifically at the higher education. We now have potentially a 300,000 user opportunity, and it's because an organization now averages about 30 BECs a month, and they don't know what to do. So that is something that working. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, I think, there's recognition in the industry that we were the pioneers in this space, the cloud detection and response space going back 3.5 years. And obviously there are people that have followed in the industry. One of the things that's happened within the last week, and it's very noticeable, is that companies that had tried those other products have now come around and say, hey, look, I'm going to get out of XYZ product and I want in SaaS alerts. And that's a huge win for us because look, in a competitive space, there are other good products out there. There's no question about it. But when you recognize as a better product than everyone else that's trying to follow you, that certainly means a lot. And I want to thank this group of folks on this call, right, for helping us get to where we are, because it's you folks that have given us feedback, have given us the roadmap to follow to get us to where we are, where other MSPs want to come off other products to join SaaS alerts. So I highlight this, yes, as a win, but also as a big thank you to this group, the folks on the SASE call.
Great stuff, Jim. You could do like a parody on Mark Knopfler and Money for Nothing. I want my
he checks for free.
Yeah. Chips for free.
Yeah.
All right. So does anyone else have any wins?
Did you have something, Liran?
Yeah, just when I initially thought about the whole university thing, I'm like, oh, college students, what's the big deal? But then if you think about it, some of the most sensitive research in the country is taking place at the university level. And if a bad actor was to get in there and get a hold of some new stealth technology or new medical, whatever that thing might be, that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like in Tampa here, Liran, and certainly Jim, when you used in Boston, I mean, some of the most, cutting edge of medical research is on. I know with Moffitt Cancer right here, and obviously up with you, Jim, and when you're in the Boston area, it's real cutting edge.
Yeah, Harvard, MIT, BU, Northeastern.
And then on the cyber side, I think Carnegie Mellon, all the research they did.
Definitely. The other thing I've come to find out, there's some university systems where the alumni keep their email addresses in perpetuity.
So I have that. I still have my University of Tampa Microsoft 365 account that I've been using since I graduated 20 years ago.
So imagine all the activity, the bad actors that could have a field day, with the fact that you've got all of these email addresses out there, all these email accounts that some people use them, some people don't, but they're live. They're just like they're just waiting to be compromised. Amy, I mean, how often do you use yours?
I it tends to be my go-to for like spam stuff, and I have some really old things that that just still go there that I've never updated. So it still comes to my phone, and I check emails as they come in, but I don't necessarily use it for anything net new outbound 'cause it's still under my old married name. So it makes it a little weird to use.
Yeah.
But I
So
still
Amy,
use the 365 account. Like I have OneNote on my computer now because I love it. I haven't found anything on the Mac side or the Google side to replace it. So I use it through my UT account.
Jim, sounds like Chip, that sounds like a little shadow IT you have going on in SaaS alerts. I'd like to bring to your attention.
Yeah. I just did
the
until
Microsoft
this.
365 account, Amy.
What?
They use Microsoft 365 as their email provider.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So I didn't know about this, by the way, up until this week, that universities will leave alumni accounts in perpetuity.
which
Well,
is
for what it's worth, my first alma mater email wasn't invented, so I don't have one hanging around from
So
them.
you're good. You're good.
But you have a fax number or something, Chip?
It was a telex.
Yeah.
Pony Express, Liran.
Nice.
Actually, you had to use couplers back then. I remember doing that.
So we digress. Any folks want to talk about wins of the week that they had?
we can't go 2 weeks in a row, Jim. There's got to be somebody here with all the email activity and social engineering. Come on.
And if you have a really good one, even if it's just a so-so one, I'll feature you on LinkedIn and maybe you can make partner of the month.
Ooh.
Hey,
Wow, Amy is bribing people.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm excited about what Ben's.
No, Michelle never did that, Amy. Andrew.
Yeah.
Amy, can we send people Amazon gift cards if they win partner of
Yes,
the month?
With QR codes.
absolutely. Yeah. You download it via QR code.
But that's interesting you bring that up. I mean, think about how, you send something like, it's one thing to get just a gift card, but imagine a care package, right? Oh, it's a t-shirt, it's a this. Oh, and here's your gift card, right? So butter you up a little.
Can you get physical Amazon gift cards?
Of course.
Okay. You say that
Have
I
you
don't know.
have you been to Publix?
Yeah, have you been in a Wawa?
Oh my God. Don't get Amy going on Publix.
I have not been to a Wawa, but I am at Publix weekly. But I don't pay attention. I don't look and see like all the gift cards that they have there.
I'll send you one.
Thank you. Make it for $3,000.
Okay.
Only if you enter your SaaS Alerts credentials.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll flag that real quick.
Yeah, I had a win. A local small business. They were managing their own 365, and they had a security incident occur. And we explained to them, "Here's what we could be doing for you." And we put them on. We just put them on SaaS Alerts today, and they're like they didn't even know something like that was possible. So just like working with us, this is what we can do for you. So that was a win.
Nice.
I love
Awesome,
that.
man. Yes.
So a new client win all around in, just beyond the SaaS Alerts relationship? Are you pulling them in all the way?
We had a small piece of work with them, so moving them into the security stack is what we're doing. So,
great.
But it made it real. Like suddenly they got what we were talking about, and it was great to be able to say we can take action right away and help them. We'll show them reports and stuff. So that was a win for us to have that.
Congrats, Ann. That's
Awesome.
awesome.
Thank you, Ann.
Great.
Others. Thanks for breaking the ice, Ann.
We had our business email compromise incident that ended up requiring a third-party review. Came back and confirmed that only one file was likely accessed, and it was a file that had information protection, Azure information protection enabled. So it was restricted to only the recipient. So not really anything that could be, accessed directly, but not a lot of, no other activity. So that was good for us.
Nice.
That's
Good for
awesome.
you, Steve.
Anyone else? So I scroll here, Jim. There's 60 people on. Good showing today, Jim.
Yeah.
That's all for Phyllis. Don't get your head big there, Andrew.
Oh, I would. Yes, of course not, Chip. Thank you for that, though.
Yeah.
I gotta win, I guess I'll say.
Awesome.
It's not
Oh,
related
nice.
to what you guys were talking about, but so it's surprisingly in the last, I'll say 2 weeks, I've been having a lot better collaboration and conversations with competitors that our partners are using, which is refreshing, right? And I think it's not just for a vendor like us that it's benefit. I think MSPs in general, right? It's a great topic and conversation piece of even with your competitors local to you of being collaborative. I know at a lot, I think at Right a Boom last year, right? The gentleman was talking about how I think the Kaseya incident and how other MSPs came to help him and stuff like that, right? So I think it's a great lesson, right? Is just being able to collaborate even with your competitors for the greater good. I'll just leave
What do
it
you
at
think
that.
spurring it on, Corey? Like
What's
what
that?
do you think's causing that? The more of the collaboration, which is awesome.
I don't know. Obviously, it's not politics. What's happening? That's not happening. But I don't know. I think I just hope hopefully more vendors. The culture is changing amongst everybody, right? That we can all play on the same playground together for the again for the greater good.
Right. Yeah.
So,
really good to hear.
Yeah.
All right.
I think to add to that, it's the reputations of all MSPs in general. Like, we're in this together. It's not good for me if another MSP winds up in trouble, because that could make our clients question what we're doing. So I think that security is it's just gone crazy right now. And I've seen the same thing, a lot of collaboration. I have so many great conversations with people who in the community and even locally. It helps us all.
And that's I'm really glad to hear you say that. I was on a call actually just yesterday with some of the large platform MSPs, and one of the ideas that we're talking about is is a peer group. They're all obviously nationwide and international, but but it would be like internal security, so they wouldn't have to worry about what I'm doing in this market or how we're doing go to market. But that was literally almost word for word what you just said. They're like, if one of us, with the number of customers we have is compromised, it's not good for the industry. Forget about not good for us. It's bad for the industry. So well said. All right. Should we turn it over to Liran and team?
Yes. Before we do that, I just want to, Andrew, let you know I'll have to jump off at 1:45 because I have to go do another webinar. So.
Okay. Well, be that way, Jim. It's fine.
I have to do a Sassonomics webinar. Have to get more people certified.
All right. All right, Liran, are you gonna take it away for us or somebody on the team?
Nope, I got it.
All right.
I got it. So this will probably be the last time. I feel like we've been talking about fortified perimeters for quite some time, but it hit production on Tuesday. So it is officially out. It is officially available. And some of the top support issues and enhancement requests that we have received around fortified perimeters is what I'm going to be walking through. But for those of you that are new to the call, we released on Tuesday the ability to customize a subset of the recommended actions available from Microsoft with particular parameters in order to really customize them. and get them to behave the way that you want them to. So I'm going to walk through some examples of those. I also want to note that we continue to make enhancements to those and are going to be continuing to push out those enhancements. So there's going to be more to come. And at the same time, if you guys have ideas for things, as Jim said in the beginning, if we have an amazing idea, right, and the idea fairy comes along to us and gets us an amazing idea, one of the first things that we do is we run it by partners, because as amazing as our ideas are, if you guys don't think it's useful, then we're not really interested. So without further ado, let's get into it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go through 3 examples of, again, the most common enhancement requests and support issues that we've had. So the first one I'm going to run through is ensure MFA is enabled for all users. All right, so you guys, you have this, great, let's do it for all users, except, you know, that CEO of that manufacturing company, you've spent 187 hours talking to them, texting, meetings, faxes, refuses to turn on MFA because they're special, right? So what do we do with this? Okay, despite all our best efforts, as much as we are against this, and, you know, maybe we just need a few more hours, you know, maybe when we get to 200, they'll finally get it. But let's go in and let's customize this. Now, you'll notice this is also an ongoing. So while this was implemented last night at 9:30, so it's still ongoing. Microsoft hasn't registered it yet. But what I can do here is I could come into customization. And right, it's a new column called customization, and we just hit the pencil icon here. And now we're going to add a parameter. So we are going to say, so I can pull in groups, users, and directory roles. So I'm going to pull in that particular user. So apply this recommended action, ensure MFA for all users, when this does not equal to, and let's go with Grady Archie. That's the guy. Right? I save the configuration. So in the background, we're making the call, and we've updated this. We're going to enable MFA for all users except Grady Archie. So even though it's ongoing, what it's going to do is it's actually going to apply it with this setting here. So let's go to the next one, right? So the next one is ensure MFA for all admin roles. This one is an interesting one because last time I checked the Microsoft documentation, and to the best of my knowledge, this has not changed yet. Microsoft says add MFA to all admin roles except the break glass account. So in this case, I want to take this, and this is probably our biggest Fortify enhancement request. And so rather than kind of like hard code it in the back or do anything, right, we've modified it. So there's a lot of flexibility here in terms of what you can do. Groups, users, directory roles. So I'm going to go to users and say user does not equal to, and then I'm going to select my break glass account and again, save this configuration. And since this is in the open actions, I don't actually have to apply yet. I just kind of put it in here. And so when I do apply it, this user will be ignored from the MFA for admin roles rule here. All right, so the next one is one that this is probably one of my favorites, and that is to enable conditional access policy to block legacy authentication. Now, let's say you have a customer who's got one of these bad boys running in the office, right? This thing's been going strong since hairbands were doing their thing, and they love this printer. They love ripping the edges off the paper. It's solid printer, right? So that thing is networked, and Ben and I spent a considerable amount of time to make sure that we could get that thing on the network if we needed to, right? So that is possible. And so we need to exclude that printer from the legacy authentication, right? And the customer will not give it up. They love this printer. It works. So how do we do this? Again, same thing. If I had a customized group that was called, I don't know, like legacy devices, whatever it is, I could come in here, I could select that group, and I say save that configuration, right? And this is actually a much more efficient way to handle things, because you're not going to have to continuously go back and modify your exceptions here. You can just kind of deal with it at the group level, get that configured properly in the first place, and that printer will be excluded from enabling conditional access policies to block legacy authentication. So that's really what I have here as a simple, yet I think practical illustration to address our most requested features on the Fortify customization side, plus support requests or people telling us, I can't apply this because I need the ability to block whatever legacy device that cannot handle any type of modern authentication. So now you have the ability to go in and get this configured.
Liran, can you jump into the action sections and just let everyone get an idea of how many policies that we've built so far, policy recommendations from Microsoft that we've built so far that actually have this capability, that have the parameters capability built in?
Sure. So one of the things that we're working on enhancing is we're going to add a filter here so you can look at only those that you can customize. But we basically have 15 of these at the moment, and I'm going to scroll through, right? So I have a total of 147 here. This table shows 100 records. So as I scroll through,
hey, Liran.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I don't think your screen share is working, buddy.
Oh no. What are you seeing? Anything?
Just the list of the one action. Okay, there we go.
There you go. That updated.
Zoom helpfully paused itself.
Nice.
So I filtered for a singular organization here to kind of narrow it down. So we have 74 total records. Last I checked, we had about 15 recommended actions that you could customize. And again, we are continuing to push more as...
You can sort by that column too. Yeah, there you go.
It's not doing what I want, Amanda. I want to sort so that it only shows this stuff, right? But again, we'll deal with this offline here. And again, I'd also like to add a filter here so I could only look at those that I can customize. But if I scroll through this list of roughly 74, I'll just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we have 17 that you can customize at the moment.
And these are covered in the KB, right? They're listed in the KB article.
The individual recommended actions are not listed in the KB, Chuck, just because they're getting added every single day almost at this point. So that'd be a lot to maintain. What's in the KB though is what parameter types are currently supported. So you can understand what you can do with each of these recommended actions once they have the parameters.
Got it.
So this is a good one to talk about because we've had instances where some partners have accidentally locked themselves out. So when you are enabling the phishing resisting MFA strength, we've enhanced Fortify that we give you this big, like scary, are you sure that you're sure that you want to do this? And you could potentially lock yourself out, right? So we call that the danger screen. So we have that. But when you are doing this here, and maybe you're doing it for the first time ever, I would definitely go in and probably exclude your global admins just to make sure that this is behaving the way that you want before applying it to the global admins in order to ensure you don't lock yourself out, right? I would always recommend testing in a separate Microsoft testing environment if you can, but this here is not one to apply across the board without adding some sort of excluded users that you have access to. Because if you do OAuth via this account with Microsoft into SaaS alerts, then you're not going to be able to OAuth into SaaS alerts in the first place because this is going to lock you out. So we've had some of those instances. So again, the recommendation is go ahead and add some exclusions here. But before you do this one in particular, definitely test it and test it with a lot of care. More questions? Any questions? I can't see the chat, so if there are questions, somebody could read them, let me know.
So Andy asked if the customizations are going to be in templates as well.
They are in templates, but Amanda knows more about that portion than me. Amanda, would you care to speak about that?
Yep, they're in templates.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Andy asks, how would we communicate to Ben's team about parameter exceptions?
Go on a
Oh.
weekly sassy call and message Ben in main chat, obviously.
No, we'll be having onboarding discussions with MSA customers and discussing exceptions, and you can also we'll have a ticketing system that you'll be able to communicate with our team through that request that to be done. Or yelling. Michael said yelling.
I love Michael's guy. Jim, are you using Chip, are you using the same ticketing system that Okta uses?
No.
Okay, just checking.
We get a lot of communications from Okta, actually. Surprising amount.
In what sense?
They seem to have incidents that they're reporting quite a bit.
Oh,
So we have an Okta account, obviously, for our own testing, or accounts with Okta, and they're very, very forward in reporting when they have internal incidents. Kind of like Google and Microsoft, when services are compromised or that sort of thing.
gotcha. All right.
And if you guys have other ideas, right, for exclusions, things to add in here, these are customized so that depending on the recommended action you open, I think like the session timeout, you can input a different like value from the default that Microsoft gives you. But if you see a recommended action that you think it would make sense to customize, definitely send it our way. We have to evaluate it and make sure that it's technically feasible to go ahead and do that. But yeah, definitely send those our way. I see, Andy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm asking, this looks like and or conditions that could be added into this customized alerts. Since you're applying it in the negative, this would be nor conditions, yeah?
No, each
So-
condition can only be added once. So if you're picking groups, you can only add groups once, and your operator is either not equal to or equal to.
All right, but what I'm getting at is if I could say, hey, I'm a user that's not in the retail group that isn't this person and has these roles, apply this exception. So I'm basically saying these are combinations that allow more sophisticated customizations.
So if you look at my screen, I kind of have done that, right? This
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily make sense. And as Amanda stated, I can't pull anything else here because I've already had the 3 parameters of groups, users, and directory roles selected. But yeah, you can do what you said, Andy, right? So I can specify a group and I can add another person to it.
So just taking this one step further, is there anything around assigning a variable, assigning a value other than taking the action that you guys are going to entertain in this? In other words, if I wanted to go through and assign, for sake of discussion, a location name, just part of that is, could we take it to that level? Or if I wanted to begin to look at
So Andy,
other aspects of this?
where you're going is something that I can't comment about on this call.
Fair enough.
Other than to say that Liran has already constructed a UI to do very much what you want to do.
Chip just let the cat out of the bag.
No, I didn't. That's not enough information to tell people where we're really going with it. But
thank you, Chip. And I really see Sazzler being able to morph into something really special beyond what it is today in the next, hopefully in the next 6 months to a year. Really do see the caterpillar coming out as a butterfly.
What more do you want from us, Andy?
No timelines, Andy. No timelines.
Enrique has his hand up, Liran.
Yes.
Enrique, while he's driving, by the way, raising his hand. Go ahead, Enrique.
Hey guys, I had a hard time finding the button. Good afternoon. Is it the end goal going to be to kind of replicate the different variables or actions we have within conditional access, like trusted locations and things like that, or does that get too complicated?
I'm gonna let Jim and Chip field that particular question.
It's a very interesting angle, Enrique. Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
You guys don't want everything for Christmas, do you?
Seriously.
I'll zip it.
These are the people that they sneak into their parents' closet before Christmas so they can try to, guess what they're getting.
Exactly.
But I celebrate Kwanzaa. I mean, how do I know?
Same difference. All holidays.
All right.
Any other questions?
One
Right.
last one. Could we literally have levels of security defined with customization to say level 1 maturity is this customization level 2 maturity is this customization level? We could begin to build that kind of process here.
Are you suggesting that we build yet another standard and call it the SASLalerts maturity standard?
No, I'm not. I'm playing this into SIS 8.1 is what I'm playing this into.
Andy always tees things up so nicely, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, there's going to be some
Andy.
great templates possible.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if there's one thing that we've learned is whenever we release anything, it will contain templates, right? We have a new login button. We're going to have templates with that thing. I don't know how, but that's what we'll do.
It's awesome.
All right, on Captain Segways, perfect handoff there, Andrew.
Oh, you mean to
Thinking
the
about-
person that everybody came for, Chip? So you can.
Yeah.
All right, let me get this. All right. Yeah, one of my so we did our wins, we did Liran, and now now that I'm sharing, Phyllis, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. Appreciate your patience. This is an awesome, lively group. So we never know how long wins will go and interaction on updates, but very, very grateful you're back with us here. So Phyllis, not everybody out there might know you or CIS. So if you could just give a quick overview and we'll get right on into it here.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Phyllis Lee. I am with the Center for Internet Security at CIS. We are a not-for-profit. We have two sides of the house, I like to say. One houses the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Underneath there is the EIISAC. They provide security advisories, threat intelligence, incident response for MSISAC does SLTT, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. EIISAC does elections infrastructure. I work in security best practices. We are home of the CIS Critical Security Controls, a cybersecurity framework, our CIS benchmarks, which are our secure configuration guides. And then we have a cloud team in which you can get those, you can get instances of operating systems and different technologies locked down to our benchmarks and different cloud service providers. And then we have some tooling in which you can assess against all our content.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Phyllis. And just quick show of hands, Amy, if you could be my eyes, or who's working with the controls at all right now, implementing them either in your own business, hopefully first, or clients, or anyone using the controls right now. Ben, were you using them, by the way? Wes, awesome. Ben, did you guys implement them when you were in your MSP?
Yeah, we used the what is it? The workstation, the endpoint CIS benchmarks,
Okay.
and started pushing those out with group policies.
And the hardening guides.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Also
All right.
got some thumbs up from Ann and Mark on that.
All right, fantastic. All right, so Phyllis, we're at version 8, and we were at version 8. And all of a sudden version 8.1 comes out. Now, easy for me to say all of a sudden. I know a lot goes into a major iteration as well as a full version release. But can you give us some insight on, and I asked you this on the Cybercast, and we're going to give resources, but I'm showing this CSF 2.0, and I asked you because one of the governing principles, my understanding of CIS is, to collaborate and support other frameworks. And my question then, and it will be again, is, was this a driver of 8.1?
Yeah, it was the main driver of 8.1. What we don't want to do is cause confusion in the marketplace. We know that organizations are subject to multiple different regulatory frameworks. And so, like you said, Andrew, that's one of our basic tenets, is to work closely with our partners. And NIST, of course, is one of our partners. We meet with them regularly to make sure that we're in line with our guidance. And so we knew 2.0 was coming out. It has govern in it. And so we wanted to support it. And what I like about this diagram that you have on there, and what I think NIST did really well, is to show that govern spans all the different, functions. And so it's important that we acknowledge that. And so we wanted to make sure that we could map to that. And as we have, a lot of processes in place within the CIS controls.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And I put a little bit of, as we talk about, I want to get your thoughts on govern, because, it's I'm joking about, but it's a fancy word, right, Phyllis? What, Curtis Dukes, who you work with and worked with at the NSA for 25 years, is the EVP. And he talks about, the need to, I'm paraphrasing, right, the need for governance in organizations. It's not something you often see in SMBs and MSPs. Unfortunately, we're starting to see it more, thank goodness. But can you give us a sense of, when you think of govern, what it is?
Right. And thank you. Yeah. So govern really is around the process and the structures you need in place to actually implement a cybersecurity program. So often we talk about, oh, well, how does cyber affect the business? What is it that we need to do? And it really is that govern function that helps organizations to understand what you actually need to implement. And it's those processes that you need to put in place and get the approval for those processes, right? We often talk about getting C-suite buy-in. It's not just the IT department or those few people. If you have cybersecurity folks, that's job is to implement cybersecurity. It really spans across the whole entire organization. And that's what that governance is there to say. Everyone has a role, and this is how we need to implement things across the organization.
So Chip, just curious, are you with, Chip's with us. Chip, I'm just curious real quick. You just went through, your whole ISO audit, and how is it that, do you see govern, the way Phyllis just shared? And if so, is it, a cultural thing where you try to not only do it, at the highest levels, but bring it around the company? And if so, how?
It is definitely cultural, and this is sometimes, this can sometimes be confused, I think, with bureaucracy, how some companies become so process focused that they get bogged down in the process. So I think there's a necessary control internal to an organization that they have to make sure they don't get too wrapped up with governance, but it really is essential to stay within a framework and prove compliance, to build a culture that everybody knows there's certain little ways you do things, right? And I'll give a concrete example. So in our company, in SaaS Alerts, when anyone needs access to another resource, they can't just go to their manager and say, hey, Liran, I need this level of database access changed for 3 weeks because I'm working on a project. They actually have to put that through our compliance team by sending a specific request into help desk to make sure that gets looked at by the right people for approvals. So that's a governance practice that becomes cultural. And oddly enough, it's actually easier than not having a defined practice because it gives us a very effective workflow. So I mean, I agree. I think it's, governance is a cultural issue, and you've got to build it in your organization from the ground up for all the little things and certainly all the big things that people do.
So, Chip, it really kind of led into the next thing, Phyllis, because a lot of the controls, what I loved about 8.0 now at 8.1 is have a process. A lot of the controls and many of the controls started off with have a process. And maybe you can talk about that. And for example, what Chip just said, which, in access control, right? He just literally outlined, something that, how it should work. It's really cool that you said that, Chip, you put, goosebumps on me, no, but in seriousness, but it's
What do you
great.
hear me sing, Andrew?
Oh, well, pull out the guitar. But Phyllis, isn't that, one, really the way it should work, right? That there's this governing way we do things that literally pointed to part of control 6, which just Chip said is have a process, right? Before we just give people access to stuff, right?
Right, right.
So if you
Yeah,
wanna
I mean,
talk-
it definitely is like have a process to give access to people across your organization, as well as revoke that access
right,
when
right.
necessary, right? And that process needs to describe, like Chip said, who's involved, who approves it, when do you do it, and then how it really gets implemented, right? And so these are important things. And I like what he said, it's a cultural thing. We often talk about having a culture of security, right? And what does that really mean? And it is like within your organization, how do you foster that culture? How do you create that culture? Of course, there's, you encourage it and all these things, but having these kind of processes in place really also does, encourage that culture change and helps implement it. And so people and organizations understand what's expected of them as well.
Awesome. So, by the way, anyone out there have questions? You got one of the most awesome minds here with us right now, and Phyllis, and of course, Chip. I won't, begrudge you either, even though you did of me. But no, I'm kidding. But now that we have Phyllis with us, feel free to ask Phyllis. We see some changes in terms of where governance shows up, right? I call them, right, these identifiers and the different controls or safeguards as they're known. If you're someone like Wes who said, yeah, we're in on the controls, there's resources out there, etc. But any, I guess, advice on when you start to see things change, identify now as govern or something of that nature, if you could give an example or two and how to approach that.
Yeah, sure. So we did, it was highly debated on the team, just so you know. Is this identify? Is this govern? How is it that we should actually apply these? And we really had to define govern internally. And so as you go through, there is a what is it, a change control matrix around was this govern, was this identify, and so on and so forth. I would recommend you really look through the controls, look through our change log, and look through our definitions of why did we change things the way that we did. And really the govern is around those processes to help you implement those controls, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And in fact, I just bear with me, folks. I'm going to put this URL in. I'm going to put a few URLs, and there's the first URL if you want to read about 8.1. Again, CIS being nonprofit. I mean, you're talking about like these are your tax dollars at work. CISA is a big partner of CIS in terms of working together. And I'm sure you're not going to be busy with the electoral ISAC for this next few
Right.
months. But they're amazing resources. They're out there. They're available. They're free
Yeah.
for.
I mean, one thing I do want to highlight for organizations that are just getting started with those .1s, we have created implementation group 1 policy templates. So those are really for those organizations just starting off, never creating a policy. If I may, you talked about working with universities and schools. We had feedback. We do a lot of work with universities and schools. We had feedback from K-12 that said, we have never created a policy before for asset management, software asset management, data management. And, now all of a sudden they're subject to state privacy law, and all the students' data is online, everything is online. And they came to us and they said, our state encouraged us to assess against IG1 of controls, and we failed every .1, and that's pretty much every govern function. I mean, they all map to govern, and they really didn't have that process in place. So we created these templates. So it's there for you all to use, either for yourself or when you're trying to help your clients as well.
Sure. Better, Rich? I hope. All right, awesome. So Phyllis, one of the other things, there were some changes in asset classes. Something that you guys have obviously used for some time, but there were a few changes. By the way, if Andy, if you're thinking no, Liran won't be doing CIS templates. He heard the word template. I'm just preempting that for you, Liran, that you don't have extra work. All right. But Phyllis, if we could talk a little bit about these particular, what some changes people might see.
Yeah, sure. So we added documentation as a nod to the govern function, and put that in there. And then we further defined the devices, software, and so on and so forth. So a lot of organizations, including us, we provide a tool called CIS RAM, perform risk assessments based on asset class, which is like a cybersecurity risk assessment, meaning like what threats affect what assets. And so, we updated that, number one, to be more clear so organizations understand and can do that mapping better. And then also, of course, to add that documentation piece so organizations know, hey, these are the things that most likely map to govern as well.
Got it. So that was part of this whole thing too, again, coming back to the govern piece.
Yes. And of course, we get commentary all along from organizations and users that use controls. And so, we also took it as an opportunity to take some of that feedback and say, okay, is this really, a device? Is it software? Is it data? So on and so forth.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move on in our last few minutes here. So Phyllis, I don't know if folks out there, I'm hoping if you haven't got started with the controls, because only a few people said they're using them, but there's a reason why 5 years ago, probably almost 5 years ago, Phyllis, give or take now, I reached out to you and said, hey, MSPs, there's a few that are starting to really adopt controls. And the reason they're adopting controls is, no offense to NIST, NIST doesn't really give guidance. I should say they're very, very liberal whereas controls are very prescriptive.
Right.
The reason I'm starting this part of the conversation is you guys were all, your guys have been awesome. All in helping MSPs and MSSPs for the past 5 years. You've been to every event known to mankind and help spreading the word. And I think the adoption of the controls across MSPs has really grown tremendously. That said, we always get the question, hey, what do I do first? Where do I start? How do I get going? And I know you get that question a lot. So if you could kind of, share some wisdom there if people are thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. So we actually also have a prioritization called implementation groups within our controls. And so we know that any organization, regardless of size, can implement any cybersecurity framework wholesale, right? It's just too much of a burden. I've talked with Fortune 100 companies who can't implement controls wholesale, and of course, small, medium businesses. And so organizations just starting off. And so we have implementation group 1, which we've done the work to say, these are the things all organizations must start with, right? And they are foundational to building upon these other controls and supporting safeguards. And a lot of those .1, those govern, that map to govern, like have a process for hardware asset management, software asset management, data management, those are included in implementation group 1. And so, and we provide a lot of tooling, a lot of resources for organizations to get started in IG1. Additionally, I would recommend, just get started with the self-assessment. We have The control self-assessment tool, which is free, you know, it's in our cloud instance. Just do a self-assessment and figure out how well have I implemented all the controls and supporting safeguards in IG1. And then just
Yeah.
iterate and improve over time. I mean, that's, you know, the beauty of not being a regulatory framework is there's not this hard pass or fail. It is implement, get better over time. If you can pull in controls because you get credit for them anyway because of the tooling maybe you have. You can say, oh, I don't need this safeguard or this control or sub control because I have another compensating control. But we really just encourage folks just to get started and improve over time. I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Andrew?
No, you actually said it, which is, you know, MSPs, because even if you're not doing it right now, you're not using the controls, like you said, just because you have a lot of tooling, again, average MSP, 30 to 40 tools these days, at least you have some of the controls in place. Do you have corresponding policies? Well, if you're not doing controls, if you're not doing a framework, you probably don't have a
Right.
policy,
Yep.
but and why we, again, Phyllis, I would say encourage something like CIS is because, again, we do live in an assume breach world.
Mhm.
And because MSPs can be on hot seats legally, often looking to be blamed.
Right.
If you have, and if you could talk about this before I talk about resources in a minute, Phyllis, safe harbor,
Right.
like, and let's just say you're up in New England and you're helping somebody in Connecticut, but
Yeah.
you're using due diligence and implementation group one. Just maybe talk about why that's so important, Phyllis.
Yeah, sure. So, and I love you have Controls Navigator. One of the things we also provide is we map to regulatory frameworks like NIST, like ISO, so on and so forth, and HIPAA, you know, PCI, because we know organizations are subject to those. So they start with controls and then they can show compliance to other regulatory frameworks. You know, we've done a lot of work to get adoption, you know, talking to end organizations. Why is it that you want to use the control? So much so um, that organizations look to controls to implement data privacy law or come into compliance with it, but also this kind of standard of reasonableness. So what we're seeing across the US is at this point, like 5 states have safe harbor laws. So organizations who reasonably, in quotes, implement a cybersecurity framework can have safe harbor, meaning they can only be sued up to a certain amount if they can show that they've reasonably implemented a cybersecurity framework. NIST CSF is mentioned and CIS critical security controls are mentioned. The laws, one of the laws, of course, is in Connecticut and Nevada, and there's a few others. And then, you know, behind them, there's a whole line of states actually implementing a reasonable cybersecurity law, legislation. And what we have done in CIS is we created a guide for implementing reasonable cybersecurity. We have lawyers, we had expert witnesses, and we had a judge help us create this document to show what does it mean to implement a reasonable cybersecurity framework? And of course, we make the case for CIS controls and we show you like, this is how you would implement it.
Awesome. So I know we're at the top of the hour, Phyllis, and but I'll wrap up with this, is that there was a question about, you know, is there a class on policy writing? It's a great question, Josh. You know, whenever you get into policy, that, you know, you probably want to make sure that you're crossing eyes. That's something maybe legally, you know, and again, something you want to assist. But if it's that company's policy, it's something they need to own. You can certainly help them. But do you know of any courses on policy writing?
I do not. I do not. I mean, I would say, you know, take a gander at the templates. I mean, they're free. So I'm not trying to sell you anything. And those templates were created, everything we do is consensus based. Those templates were created with organizations, small and large, who have had to create those policies. And many of those organizations were subject to, you know, regulatory frameworks that require those policies. So if you are new to it, start with those to help you get an idea of what a policy should look like.
Yeah. And I would say definitely, if you haven't done it, start internally first,
Yeah.
as always, before again looking externally and advising. And I would just say, and I'll just give you an example, be careful if there's anything to do with numbers. And what I mean by that, Phyllis, is if it's like, well, we recommend this much of coverages or this much of anything like that, I would stay away from that, because again, that can come back to bite you based on the, you know, saying when, because God forbid it was too little or too much or whatever, you are going to be the one they're going to come after. But we are working on, lastly, Phyllis, you and I are working on a project of training that we hope to have out probably in a month or two, that we can help everybody a little more with. So with that, I know everybody has got to jump. As always, Phyllis, appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with the community.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Awesome having you. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
All right. Take
Bye
care.
now.